Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So as you can see in my Procreate folders, I actually have a few Genshin drawings, one of my OC, some VTuber drawings as well that I actually haven't finished recently, and I could be working on them, but because I know it's going to take me a little bit longer to finish because it's a lot more coloring, rendering, and cleaning up, I decided that I wanted to actually just do a sketching session for today. So that is what we are going to be doing. So I have about like a 5x7 inch canvas with, I think it's 300 dpi, and we're going to be doing kind of like a digital sketchbook spread, if that makes sense. So I'm going to treat it pretty much the same way how I usually treat my sketchbook spreads. So we're just going to basically fill up the entire canvas, and then after I finish sketching, I am going to add some color and clean it up just a little bit, but because they're sketches, I'm not going to clean them up to like the full finished, I guess, if that makes sense. So I am going to be drawing my OC Masaki today. I mentioned in a previous video, or a few previous videos, that I kind of wanted to draw my OCs a little bit more specifically Masaki, because he is my favorite, but there's always like a lot of different things I wanted to illustrate him doing, or just like kind of getting ideas to flow. And I think it's always fun to do this by doing like a sketch page and just filling out the page, because it's just fun to do like either different scenarios, different poses, just expressions, or anything that you can fit up to fill the space up for your allotted space, whether it be like a square or a rectangle or whatever you want it to be. But for me, it's just easier for me to kind of take my usual size for my portraits and then just switch it to the longer way, if that makes sense, horizontally, so that we can fill it up, because I do like working in a rectangle rather than a square sometimes, because it gives me a little bit more opportunity to fill it up a little bit differently. But let's talk about why I'm doing sketches today. And like I mentioned, I have a few drawings that I could be working on, and they are going to take a bit longer and require a little bit more, I guess, strain in my hand, I guess. I usually don't get any pain when I'm drawing anyways, because I usually try my best to keep my arm and hand in tip-top shape so that we don't get to that kind of point where I do need to take a big break for letting my hand recover, so I don't get like carpal tunnel or arthritis. But I was kind of doing like something for like almost 9 hours yesterday, and because of that, my right hand and my right arm feels very weak. I think it's because I kept clenching my right hand a lot, so I don't want to be clenching my hand that much when I'm drawing for today's session. And sketching is pretty like carefree for me, and I don't put a lot of pressure if I'm not like full on rendering things, because when I'm full on rendering, sometimes I do press a little bit harder, or I'm going back and forth in an area over and over again. So because sketching feels a little bit more freeing, it doesn't put that much strain on my arm. So that is why I am going to be doing a sketching session for today, and I'm going to schedule the other videos to go up some other time when I can finish them promptly. So another thing I wanted to talk about, I did post this onto my Instagram stories at some point, but I want to do another Genshin Idol AU kind of thing. So I think a lot of you guys are familiar with the speed paint I did, along with, I want to say, an ASMR for Wanderer. Maybe it was an ASMR, I'm assuming it was, where I kind of turned them into kind of like J-pop-ish idol attire, and they're kind of under the unit. Some people call them Breeze with a 6 in the front, or some people call them Gale with a 6 in the front, respectively, for like the B and the G part of the names. But I want to do one for like the Sumeru boys, so that would be Alhaitham, it'll be Kave, it'll be Sino, Tignari, and I want to say it's gonna be 4 people, but I also know that Wanderer is technically part of Sumeru, according to his vision. So I wanted to ask you guys if I might do a poll as well at some point on Instagram, so I can get people's opinions. So I might take the responses from that, but if you guys want to like add reasoning or your preferences and stuff, you can let me know in the comments. But I want to know whether or not you prefer to see Wanderer part of that group as well. If not, then I'll just leave him in Breeze and then do the other boys as some other group for the Sumeru kind of like idol esque look. And I'm more interested in just like creating the the outfits and stuff for them. I've been looking more towards like Monster X kind of attire. I do like more of that kind of more like darker clothing, edgier, a little bit more slightly revealing, I guess, for Monster X. That I was leaning towards like 17th year. So if we go to Fear route, it is more of a darker, but it's more sophisticated, a little bit more formal. And I do like that kind of fashion as well. And I found it being kind of nice. I might actually redo the one I did of Al Haytham. You guys didn't see a very good picture of him when I showed you guys at the very beginning, because I kind of want to redo it. I don't really like how I drew his face. As usual, I struggle to draw his face. But I do think the outfit might fit him. I do have him with like a mesh kind of, or like somewhat see-through shirt, probably, for like his chest and stuff. And then I want to have like the giant collar still and like kind of formal clothing. So I might actually see if I can plan a little bit more for his outfit before I actually start that. But if you guys are interested in seeing that, I'll try my best to either slowly work on them for live streams, and maybe I'll include like a live stream here or there on YouTube as well. But then after that, maybe I'll do a time lapse where I include all 4 together. Or if I can, maybe I'll make individual videos for them. We'll see what happens. Do let me know what you guys prefer though, whether or not you want the Sumeru boys to be 5 or 4 people, so that I can kind of take that in consideration. And then I think at some point I'm gonna do the girls too, because I could definitely do that. But let's talk about the drawing session for a little bit. So for the Masaki doodles, the one on the very left, I remember seeing a picture. I don't remember if it's on Pinterest or if I just happened to see it somewhere, but basically it's this guy leaning up on I think it's like a train seat, so, or like on some kind of public transportation-ish kind of thing, and he's just like scrunched up his body, knees up, everything, just kind of leaning into the back part of the chair seat thing, like a booth chair kind of sitting arrangement. And they just look really cozy from what I can remember. Maybe I'm idealizing it, but I wanted to draw Masaki in a similar way, and I didn't know how to place his hands, so I only drew up to his knees. I didn't really draw his lower torso or anything, so I just have him kind of like leaning and just kind of taking a nap or dozing off. The next one that I did was kind of Masaki either putting on his apron or taking it off. I think I need to figure out more on how I want to draw Masaki's apron, which is kind of why I've been holding back on doing a full reference, because how I initially designed his what is it called, apron, the back part, it doesn't make sense, and I feel like I just tried to make it make sense, but it doesn't. So I'm gonna have to readjust it. I might make it similar to my old apron when I was doing like in painting and printmaking in uni. So yeah, I might have to reference that. The third one, so the one on the very right, I had Masaki. It's kind of like a potential trial run or a sketch for something that I want to do for the future, because I would love to do something clover related for Masaki. I've always drawn him with flowers, but I associate him with like the 4-leaf clover, and then I always associate Koji, who's my like smaller younger OC, who's like literally a kid, and I associate him with like a 3-leaf clover. So yeah, I kind of want to do an illustration maybe for both of them, and then we can do something for Sato that can represent her, and maybe something for Akemi as well. But yeah, and then the last doodle that I'm currently working on, I did go through I think 2 different set of eyes for him, and then the one above this one I went through I think 3 sets of hands, because I did not know how I wanted to draw his hands holding the 4-leaf clover. But for this one, I thought it'd be cute for him to hold his phone, and he's just showing you a picture that he's taken. And we'll get to what's the content on his phone, because I'll actually block it in when we're actually in the coloring stage, when I'm starting to clean up everything. But now that the sketch is done, we can move on to the actual coloring portion. So I'm setting the sketch to multiply. I've also duplicated, I believe, and I added a kind of like a soft orangey background because I wanted everything to be generally warm. And I'm not sure if it's because I was tired. I actually didn't take the background color into consideration all too much. So once I finish coloring everything for the most part, I am gonna add a overlay layer to make everything like a lot more warmer so that it kind of fits the background a little bit and kind of the aesthetic that I actually wanted in the beginning. But I block in all the skin. So I actually have a separate layer for all of this above my background just to keep them separate, and just in case if I want to alter the background, I don't have to alter Masaki's colors along with it. But yeah, we're just keeping everything simple and basically using the same colors for all of them together. Because I don't think I have any drastic lighting changes for any of them until a little bit later, but I'm only adding a little bit of like sunlight to 2 of them so that they can have a little bit more of warmer light beaming in. Yeah, I think the coloring's pretty straightforward. I didn't do too much like shading in terms of making things look absolutely correct because like I said, these are sketches, so I don't really mind if they look a little bit off. So I only did like 2 passes for the skin, a little bit for the eyes here and there. Yeah, and then we're gonna do the hair really quickly, and it's not gonna be a lot of detail, even though like once we get to the rendering stage, I think I render the larger Masaki, so the one that I'm currently working on, a lot more than any of the other ones, because usually if I do a larger doodle in a set for like a sketchbook page or a spread like this, I like to make the larger one to be a lot more in focus, so I spend a lot of time probably fleshing out the details and making sure that things look at least a little bit more finished than the rest of them. But let me see if there's anything else I wanted to update you guys about. Okay, other than the hand thing, because like I said, my whole arm just feels really tired, and the reason why my hand feels really botched, besides the fact that, I guess I should give context, I was using like a staple gun for like quite a few hours, so it constantly had me clenching my hand over and over, and I accidentally clipped my hand 3 times, so I had to wear a glove. But because of that, my hand grip feels a little bit weak today, and those lifting stuff from my arm feels very sore. But for me, if anything, I always feel a little bit weird if I don't draw that day. So if I can, I don't mind like sacrificing sleep sometimes, because I do love drawing at night. Everything just feels very peaceful, very quiet. No one can really bother you and stuff, and I can just like listen to podcasts or music or live stream VODs and whatever I want to, and I don't really have to get interrupted or anything. I feel very like immersed in my own environment, so I feel like it's always comfy to draw in that situation. And I don't know, I just like drawing so much that I do miss drawing even if I don't draw for one day, because I think about a lot of things a lot of the times. So it's either like, oh, maybe I want to try adding this to drawing, or if like, even if I'm browsing on Instagram or Twitter and I see like a color palette, or I see photography poses or like other people's artwork, I always like, it stays in my brain for a while and I always think about it quite a bit, so it urges me that I want to draw, or at least think about it in terms of like, maybe I want to go on Pinterest and look up references so I can compile something for an illustration, or maybe, I don't know, maybe my brain's like too empty and I'm just filling it up with this art things. But yes, in terms of further drawing, I finished up the coloring for the most part, so it kept things pretty simple, pretty minimalistic. I locked the sketch layer so that we can just color just the sketch lines, and I'm taking kind of like a very warmish orange color and laying that everywhere, especially like near the skin area, so we can keep things very soft. Once we have that all done, I merge the layers together. So you can see that right now, merge it downwards, and then I am going to make a new layer, set that to overlay. I'm talking faster than I can work. So yeah, set that to overlay, and I'm gonna add in a very orange color. I'm gonna knock it back quite a bit before we actually merge it, so that it doesn't look super jarring, but I do like how warm it looks. I wish I did take it in consideration at the very beginning so I wouldn't have to do an overlay layer, but I think it's also okay to use the blend modes like this, because I tend to add colors afterwards anyways when I'm rendering. But also here, I also wanted to add a little bit of lighting to the one on the very right and the one on the very left, because those two are my favorite doodles, and I kind of want to do more of a finished illustration with a similar concept for each of them. I think it'd be cute if there was like plants growing around Masaki or something for the one on the left, and then the one on the right, I do want to do something clover related. So yeah, I wanted to kind of flesh them out a little bit more compared to the other smaller ones. So a lot of the rendering cleaning up is actually going to be focused on this one, because I do think this one looks cute, even though I kind of omitted the indication of where his nose would be. I don't think it's necessary to have it, because I do think he looks cute regardless, but yeah, hopefully it doesn't bother people too much. But when I am doing kind of like the cleaning up rendering phase for smaller doodles like this, I do like pulling out the contrast, because if I'm not taking the time to actually do like proper shading, think about the lighting, doing like clothing folds and cleaning up everything to look crisp and clean, one way to make it look at least a little bit more finished in my opinion is taking usually a darker color and kind of pushing the contrast so that your eyes kind of follow those more so than the little scraggly lines that I have everywhere. I think that's just like also personal preference. I do like the contrast and having kind of like these thicker, bolder lines here and there. And I think it might stem from the fact that when I do doodles in my sketchbook and I do like mid-tone and lighter colors in like for spreads and stuff, especially with maybe water-based markers, I do like using a dark color if I can, and if not, I'll just use like black and have that contrast kind of like fill in the details for everything. I like adding black to a lot of the doodles that I do, or at least like dark areas of high contrast of a dark color, because I do like the look of it, especially with like paler pastel colors. But yeah, I'm just basically cleaning up everything at this point, so there's not too much to talk about in terms of the process. It's just kind of picking and choosing and deciding how I feel. So if I don't really like a doodle, maybe I don't spruce it up. If I like one more than the other, I could just take my time to spruce it up as much as I want. And I think for the most part, the entirety of the sketching session, I think it's 2.5 hours or so. I think I did spend the most amount of time, I think, rendering this one a little bit, and the majority went to probably me fumbling around with some of the sketching, especially with like the hands this time around. I do want to do some hand studies eventually, so it'd be nice to maybe do that for a video so I can show you guys how I choose references or take my own references for hand studies, because I feel like I can draw hands as long as I have a reference, but there's some angles that I do struggle with if I'm just thinking from like on the top of my brain, because of like this perspective or foreshortening. So I'll see if I can plan a session like that in the future. Okay, while we're working on this Masaki, so I wanted to kind of have Masaki kind of show you off like a picture on his phone, and what I went with is a stack of pancakes, or something that resembles a stack of pancakes on his phone, because Masaki is a fan of sweet things, like a lot, so I feel like he'd be the type to take pictures of like cute desserts if he likes them and stuff. So yeah, I don't remember what a strawberry looks like on the inside, so I left it quite vague right there, but a little bit of syrup, a little bit of berry sauce or whatever, some mint leaves. Let me think. There's whipped cream and stuff, and I just added simple shadows because from far away it kind of looks like a photo, so I don't need to put too much detail for that. It was easier for me to block it in via shapes rather than sketching it out fully, because I know I'll be trying my best to meticulously try to keep things in the line and stuff, so it's just easier for me to block out with just shapes. I fixed up Masaki's nose here because it looked kind of funky. Also his eyes looked a little bit funky too, and I think it's because like I usually don't like copying pasting eyes, even if I do run into the issue that eyes are uneven or they're not like aligned or anything, but there's something uncanny about copying pasting eyes directly like from one another, like just exactly mirrored. But I think it's also because like the placement of pupils, maybe it's just me, because sometimes I don't align the pupils correctly, so it looks like they're looking off into the distance rather than maybe looking at you or whatever I want them to be looking at. But for this one, this particular Masaki, I do like it quite a bit, the one with the clover. So yeah, I do want to do something with it. Maybe a watercolor piece? I don't know. I might not do it for a video if I do it for a watercolor piece, because the filming process for watercolor videos makes me want to cry for how much footage you have to take in consideration and try to condense. But maybe I'll do it if I plan to not move my paper too much, because I think the one I did of Ike, I moved the camera a lot and moved my paper so much that I feel like it would have been very dizzy as a time-lapse only. But the one I did for Reimu that was like a time-lapse, for Reimu was like a lot easier because the camera didn't move at all and I didn't move the paper as much, so it was pretty much just me filling in the color. So I'll definitely take that into consideration if I do want to do another painting session in the future. But yeah. This is what I was talking about, that even though I added like a, what is it called, an overlay layer, sometimes I do introduce some other colors so that we don't keep everything too samey in terms of the colors. So I did deepen the purple a little bit for his apron, and if I can, I'm adding whites in certain areas. But for the most part, I do pick the majority of the colors for my color palette or for like rendering and cleaning directly from the canvas itself. Because hopefully I did take into consideration like lighting and the correct colors that I want to use for the most part during the actual coloring phase. Just makes the workflow a little bit easier so I don't have to keep opening up my color wheel. But there is like a lot of occasions where I have to adjust the colors, especially like this kind of part where I'm doing kind of darker outlines. Sometimes that's not present in the piece, so I need to pick a darker color, drop it in so that we can kind of make them a little bit have higher contrast. I think that's about it for the most part. I do feel very tired today, even though it's Wednesday. Yeah, you guys are probably seeing this video in a few hours. But to finish off the rest of the little doodles or sketches, I'm actually adding a little white border around all the doodles so that they can stand out from the background but also stand out from one another. So I kind of also pick and choose which doodles is considered in front of another one, and it's kind of easy because it's usually in the order of how I drew them for the most part, because the way I draw them, I usually don't make them overlap. The only exception is the one Masaki on the very bottom right, because I did make his head fully visible rather than cutting it off where Masaki's shoulder was and the other Masaki with the clover hand. But yeah, to finish it off, I'm just adding his name right at the bottom to fill in the space. And I think that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me sketch out Masaki for today's video. I know this video is a bit on the casual side in terms of just drawing whatever, but hopefully I'll get back into doing some finished pieces, because there definitely is some concepts or drawings I really want to do, and it'd be fun to maybe film more of the process and stuff, just for like my own future sake. If I want to reference it at some other point, or just to show you guys, because I know a lot of you guys are interested in the process. So yeah. Oh, I'm also drawing like a drop shadow kind of thing, so I kind of copy and pasted Masaki's name over and over like about 3 times, merged it so that's a little bit thicker. I changed it to multiply, also changed the color to kind of a dark muted blue, and then I used the Gaussian blur to blur it just slightly so that it kind of outlines the white just a little bit so it can stand out. But here are the Masaki doodles. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me draw Masaki. I do want to do more finished pieces of him eventually so I can actually have proper references of him as well. But yeah, I think I'll talk to you guys next time. You guys can just watch the time lapses right at the very end, and I'll end the voiceover here. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!